There is a black resin watch with a skeleton dial sitting in an airport duty-free cabinet right now. The price tag reads $189. Stamped across the dial is the word automatic in italic gold lettering, even though the movement spinning behind it was assembled in a factory outside Guangzhou for less than the cost of a coffee. A man passing through that terminal, somewhere in his early 50s, will pick it up before his connecting flight, slide it onto his wrist, and walk to his gate believing he just did something clever. He did not. Every executive he sits across from for the next 10 years will register what is on his wrist before they register his handshake, and not a single one of them will be impressed. Your watch in your 50s is not a fashion choice. It is not a souvenir. It is a piece of evidence. It tells the room whether the last 20 years of your career taught you anything about what is real and what is sold to you. The men getting this wrong, loudly, are wearing one of these 5. These are the 5 watches that quietly destroy your credibility after 50. And the 5 that earn the room before you say a word. Number 1. The Skeleton Dial Mall Automatic. There is a specific category of watch that has multiplied across airport kiosks, outlet centers, and online retailers over the past decade. The Skeleton Dial Automatic. Open work dial faces showing exposed gears underneath, marketed with the language of haute horlogerie, priced between $150 and $400. Brands like Sterling, Acrobose, and Heritage lead this category, but the imitators run into the dozens. The trick is the dial. Removing material to expose movement components is genuinely difficult work when done properly. On a Vatron Constantine or an Audemars Piguet, the bridges are hand-chamfered, the wheels are mirror-polished, and the work takes hundreds of hours per piece. On the mall version, the skeleton effect is most often achieved through a stamped open dial laid over a Chinese movement that has not been finished or decorated to any meaningful standard. The exposed gears underneath are not hand-polished. They are stamped, oiled, and dropped into the case as a unit. The base metal is typically a zinc alloy plated to look like steel. The plating begins to flake at the case back where it touches your skin, usually within the first year. The deeper problem is what the watch claims to be. It is impersonating a $50,000 grand complication using a sub-$100 movement and a stamped open dial. At 50, the men in your industry have seen the genuine article on someone else's wrist. They will know what yours is the moment they see it. The imitation is the insult. The next entry on the avoid list is harder to spot because the brand owns the marketing of every magazine you read. Number 2. The Fashion House Quartz. This category includes Movado, Emporio Armani, Boss, Coach, and the entire Fossil Group portfolio that licenses watch production for designer labels. These pieces retail between $200 and $600, and the gap between perceived value and actual content is among the widest in the entire watch industry. Inside almost every one of them sits a Miyota or Ronda Quartz movement, the same caliber family that powers gas station watches at a fraction of the price. The case is stamped steel, brushed by machine, with a mineral crystal that scratches if you brush it against a door frame. What you are paying for is the dial print. The logo, the typography, the marketing photography of a man in a charcoal suit walking through Manhattan. That is the product. The mechanical content of the watch is incidental to the transaction. For a man at 50, this category is particularly dangerous because the watches sit in the price band that feels expensive enough to be serious. $300 feels like a real watch. $300 at this price tier buys you a logo on a generic movement and nothing else. The men across the boardroom from you, the ones who quietly own a Datejust or a Tank, can identify a Fashion House Quartz from across the room because the dial print and the case proportions never match what real watchmaking looks like. You spent $300 to look like you spent $30,000, and they spent nothing at all to see through it. The third entry on the avoid list is the one that ends conversations before they begin. Number 3. The Replica Luxury Watch. This needs to be addressed plainly. A replica Patek Philippe Nautilus or a counterfeit Audemars Piguet Royal Oak does not place you alongside the men who own the originals. It places you in a separate category that those men recognize on sight and silently exit. The visual evidence is overwhelming for anyone who pays attention. The integrated bracelet on a fake Royal Oak has gaps between the links where a real one has zero tolerance. The hexagonal screws on the bezel of a counterfeit are misaligned by a few degrees because the assembly is done by hand in a back room rather than by precision machinery in Le Brassus. The dial pattern, the famous tapisserie or Claus de Paris, is screen printed on a fake instead of being hand guilloched on a Rose engine. The seconds hand stutters. The crown threads bind. The case back, when removed, reveals a stamped Chinese movement instead of the in-house caliber the watch is supposed to contain. The mechanical issues are not even the worst part. The worst part is the social verdict. At 50, you are at an age where the people you do business with are looking for signals of integrity. They are running quiet calculations about whether you can be trusted with their money, their reputation, their introduction to someone who matters. A replica on your wrist answers that question for them before you have a chance to. If a luxury watch is not within reach right now, that is fine. The category of honest, well-made watches under $1,000 is wider than it has ever been. Wear something real. The fourth entry on the avoid list is loud in a different way, and the volume is the entire problem. Number 4. The crystal-encrusted statement piece. Cubic zirconia bezels. Pave-set crystal dials. Full lab-created stone bracelets where every link is set with imitation diamonds engineered to refract light from any angle. There is a real cultural lineage to this aesthetic, rooted in hip-hop, professional sports, and entertainment. On a 30-year-old recording artist at a video shoot in Miami, the look is contextually correct. On a 53-year-old at a quarterly review or a college reunion, it reads as a man who has confused volume for presence. The deeper issue is what the watch is doing visually against the wearer. By the time a man reaches his 50s, his hands tell the truth about him. Sunspots, knuckle prominence, the small scars accumulated across decades. None of this is a flaw. It is a record. A heavily reflective stone-set watch placed against a hand like that does not flatter either subject. It amplifies the artificial against the authentic, and the room reads the contrast instantly. A correct watch at 50 should support your presence, not compete with it. It should be noticed in the second moment of meeting you, not the first. The men who command rooms wear watches that whisper. They do not arrive in advance of their handshake. When the watch on your wrist has more sparkle than the chandelier overhead, the watch has overtaken you. And nothing announces uncertainty faster than a man buying volume in place of credibility. The fifth entry on the avoid list is the most controversial of all, because the device itself is a marvel of engineering. Number 5. The smartwatch in place of a dress watch. This is the entry that draws the most pushback, and the pushback misses the point. The Apple Watch Ultra, the Samsung Galaxy Watch, the Garmin Fenix. These are extraordinary feats of engineering. Continuous heart rate monitoring, ECG functionality, GPS routing accurate to the meter, fall detection, navigation, payment systems. The Apple Watch in particular has saved measurable numbers of lives through atrial fibrillation alerts. None of that is in dispute. The dispute is contextual. A black silicone band wrapped around your wrist beneath the cuff of a wool blazer at a board dinner sends a signal the room cannot ignore. The rectangular OLED display, regardless of how sophisticated the silicon driving it, is the visual language of a phone, not a wristwatch. It tells the table you are reachable, distractible, and oriented toward the next notification rather than the conversation in front of you. A mechanical watch sends the opposite signal. Patience. Permanence. The discipline to choose an object designed to outlast its owner over one designed to be replaced in 3 years. Both signals have legitimate places. The gym, the trail, the morning run, the hospital recovery room. The smartwatch belongs in those spaces. It does not belong on the wrist of a man at 50 sitting across from a client, a board, or his wife at their anniversary dinner. At this age, the wrist is the one piece of real estate that announces what you value. Spend it on something that does not need to be charged. That closes the avoid list. Now the 5 watches that earn the room before you have spoken. Number 1. The Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso. Jaeger-LeCoultre commissioned this watch in 1931 for a specific problem. British Army officers were playing polo in colonial India and shattering the crystals on their wristwatches against the impact of mallets and saddles. The solution was a rectangular case mounted on a sliding cradle that allowed the dial to be flipped over, presenting the solid steel case back outward during play. Nearly 100 years later, that same flipping case is the watch's defining gesture, and almost nothing about the original design has changed. The proportions remain narrow. The dial remains Art Deco. The flip remains a small private ritual that happens between you and the watch every time you adjust your sleeve. The reverso has been worn by Amelia Earhart, Yves Saint Laurent, and the King of Sweden. The current reverso tribute duo face offers two complete dials, one on each side of the cradle, allowing 2 time zones or 2 entirely different aesthetic configurations on the same watch. At under 9 mm thick, it slides under any cuff without resistance. On a man at 50, the reverso says something specific. You are not buying a watch for the first time. You are choosing a watch that other men recognize as a watch buyer's watch. The reverso tribute starts around $9,800. It is not the loudest choice in the room. It is the choice of a man who stopped trying to be loud somewhere in his 40s. The second watch on the respected list is the most quietly recognized in serious company. Number 2. The Vacheron Constantin Patrimony. Vacheron Constantin was founded in Geneva in 1755, which makes it the oldest continuously operating watch manufacturer on Earth. The Patrimony line is the most restrained expression of that history. A simple round case, a clean lacquer dial, applied baton or Roman numeral indices, and almost no other visible information. No date window. No subdial. No branding beyond a small Maltese cross logo at 12. The case measures 40 mm in the standard configuration with a thickness under 9 mm, which means it sits flat against the wrist and disappears under any tailored cuff without protest. The movement inside is finished to standards that exceed what most buyers will ever notice. Hand-polished bevels on the bridges. Circular Geneva striping across the plates. Hand-engraved rotors on the automatic versions. None of this is visible without removing the case back, which most owners never do. That is precisely the point. The Patrimony is a watch you wear for yourself rather than for the room. The men who recognize it are usually wearing one themselves, and they will say nothing when they see yours, because saying anything would betray the entire principle of the watch. Pricing for the Patrimony starts around $22,000 in steel. At 50, it is a watch that signals you have arrived somewhere quiet, and you intend to stay there. The third watch on the respected list is the one with the longest unbroken legacy in public life. Number 3. The Omega Speedmaster Professional. On July 21, 1969, Buzz Aldrin stepped off the lunar module onto the surface of the moon wearing an Omega Speedmaster Professional strapped over the cuff of his pressure suit. NASA had tested every chronograph available in 1965 against thermal extremes, vacuum exposure, vibration, and shock. The Speedmaster was the only watch that survived. Every manned NASA mission since has carried one. The Speedmaster Professional being sold today is mechanically almost unchanged from the watch on Aldrin's wrist. The same hand wound caliber 1861 movement, recently updated to the 3861, with the same column wheel chronograph layout that has been refined inside Omega's facilities since 1957. The Hesalite crystal is plastic rather than sapphire because plastic does not shatter into sharp fragments in zero gravity. That detail has remained out of nostalgia for the original specification. The case measures 42 mm with a slim profile that wears smaller than the diameter suggests. On a black leather strap, the Speedmaster works as a dress chronograph beneath a suit. On the steel bracelet, it carries weekend wear without complaint. Pricing starts around $7,400. At 50, it is one of the few watches that comes with a story already written into it. You are not buying a watch. You are buying a place inside one of the most recognizable horological lineages in modern history. The men who know, know. The fourth watch on the respected list is one of the rarest categories in modern watchmaking, made by hand in a country with no watch tradition before 2003. Number 4. The H. Moser & Cie Streamliner. H. Moser & Cie was founded by Heinrich Moser in 1828, faded from prominence over the 20th century, and was revived in Schaffhausen in the early 2000s under the Milan family, who took over the brand and rebuilt it as one of the most respected independent manufacturers in Switzerland. The Streamliner Center Seconds is the watch that announced that revival to the wider collecting world. The case is an integrated cushion design with a tonneau silhouette that flows directly into the bracelet without traditional lugs, evoking the streamlined railway chronometers of the late 1920s. The dial is finished in a fume gradient that fades from a center color outward to near black at the edges, with the Moser logo applied so subtly in transparent lacquer that it almost disappears against the surface. The movement inside is the in-house HMC 200 caliber with a 3-day power reserve and a free-sprung Strawman hairspring. What separates H. Moser from the better-known Swiss brands is volume. The entire annual production sits in the low thousands across all references. Walking into a room wearing a Moser places you among watch collectors so specific that most people in the room have never heard the name. That is exactly why a man at 50 might choose it. You are not chasing recognition. You are confirming for yourself that you understand what real watchmaking is. The Streamliner Center Seconds retails at $21,900. It is a watch for the man who has nothing left to prove externally, and everything to enjoy privately. The fifth watch on the respected list is the most accessible entry point into legitimate watchmaking, and it costs less than most fashion watches. Number 5. The Nomos Glaschut Tangent. Nomos Glaschut is a German manufacturer based in the Saxon town of Glaschut, the historical center of German watchmaking before the war. The Tangent is the brand signature reference, designed in the Bauhaus tradition of pure function and zero ornamentation. A round case in stainless steel. A flat silver dial with painted Arabic numerals. Slim blued steel hands. A small second subdial at 6. Nothing else. The case measures 35 mm in the standard reference, which at first reads as small by modern standards, but on the wrist of a man at 50 it sits exactly where a dress watch is meant to sit, fitting cleanly under any cuff without ever requesting attention. The movement inside is the in-house Alpha caliber, hand-wound, finished with Glaschut ribbing across the plates and tempered blue screws holding the bridges. None of the finishing is visible from the dial side, which is the entire point of a Bauhaus watch. The aesthetic discipline lies in what has been removed, not what has been added. Pricing for the Tangent 35 sits between $1,860 and $2,330 at retail, depending on caseback configuration, which makes it the only watch on this respected list reachable on a normal salary without compromise or financing. At 50, the Tangent sends a quiet but precise signal. You did not need to spend $20,000 to demonstrate that you understood watches. You only needed to spend correctly. So, the pattern across all 5 recommended watches is consistent. Restrained dimensions. Honest dials. Movements built by manufacturers who actually make movements, finished to standards most buyers will never inspect but every serious watch owner will recognize. No screaming logos. No imitation stones. No printed claims of luxury where the substance does not back them up. At 50, the watch on your wrist is no longer about announcing what you can afford. It is about confirming what you have figured out. The 5 watches on the avoid list share the inverse trait. They are loud where they should be quiet, decorative where they should be precise, eager where they should be calm. They project the single quality no man in his 50s should ever advertise from his wrist. Insecurity. Choose accordingly.